12:40, so you have plenty of time to talk. Next is a person for whom many of you are familiar. I believe he's a solo practitioner. He can correct me if I'm mistaken about this, but an attorney, Ken Dandar, who represents the Lisa McPherson estate. And I do not know the topic, however, that's a rich field of controversy. So, Mr. Dandar?
Thank you. I'm here to talk about the murder of Lisa McPherson by a cult known as the Church of Scientology. I am not a solo practitioner. I practice with my brother, and that's why we call it Dandar and Dandar. That's right. When I received a phone call from some unknown person in Dallas, Texas, to please come to Dallas and talk to a lady by the name of Fanny McPherson about the death of her daughter, I had just seen the program on Inside Edition about this, and I said, absolutely. So I scheduled to meet the family of Lisa McPherson as I was going to California to take a deposition in a medical malpractice case. That's what I mostly do. It's personal injury medical malpractice. And so I said, well, I'll see you on my layover in Dallas when I'm waiting for my connecting flight to San Diego. So I met Ann Carlson and Del Liebrick, and they started to fill me in on more details of what they knew at that time in January of 1997 about the death of Lisa McPherson. And they also informed me that they've been looking for lawyers, but lawyers keep turning them down as soon as they mention the defendant is the Church of Scientology. Now, I will express to you that in January of 1997, like most people in the world, I was naive about the Church of Scientology. I said, well, they're a church, aren't they? Well, they're a little strange. They're not the normal kind of church that we all know about and grow up with. I go to church. I've gone to several different denominations. I said, I live in St. Petersburg. What's so strange about the Church of Scientology that's in Clearwater? Well, I'm just like everybody else. I read the newspaper, I watch the news on TV, and I go on with my life. I've seen a few of them walking up and down Fort Harrison in their blue sailor suits. They look harmless. What's the big deal? They do things a little differently than the rest of us. Well, I said I was naive in 1997, January. And then I met Fanny McPherson. Contrary to Scientology's claims, I did meet Fanny McPherson live, in person, in her home in Dallas, Texas. And there she sat in her favorite chair in the corner on oxygen, wide, lucid, vibrant person that she was, dying of cancer in her last few days of her life. January 27th, 1997, I will never forget that day. And then I said to Ann Carlson, her sister, and Dell, I said, you know, I really like to videotape this, and I didn't think to bring my video camera, because this needs to be videotaped. And there was no lawsuit pending. So Ann Carlson got in her car and ran down to get her video camera and brought it back, and the battery was dead. So I tape recorded the conversation because I did have my dictator with me. All lawyers should have one. We all do. But I can't tell you what that conversation was about because that's privileged. But I can tell you what took place before and after that conversation. And that is, Fanny McPherson told me about her relationship with Lisa. And even though Scientology doesn't like their members to associate anymore with family members who are not Scientologists, they call them suppressive persons, Fanny McPherson did have a strong and ongoing close relationship, not only with her mother, Fanny, but also with her aunts, her Uncle Sam in Mexico, and her cousins. And Fanny told me her last conversation with Lisa in November of 1997. Lisa called up and said, "Mom, you know I promised I'd be home for Thanksgiving. Well, Mom, they got me working around the clock. Mom, I can't come home for Thanksgiving. There's so much work I have to do. Mom, Mom," and she started crying. And Fanny started crying. And Fanny said, "Don't worry. You're not doing anything wrong." Lisa kept saying, "Yes, they say I'm doing this wrong, I'm doing this wrong, I'm letting down my group, I'm letting down my group." And Fanny said, "No, you're not. You're extremely strong, you're competent, and you always do the best job that can be done. You just get your job done." She said, "I will, Mom, but I promise I'll be home for Christmas." Now, Scientology paints a different picture. Scientology paints the picture that Lisa didn't really have any relationship with her mother, Fanny McPherson. In fact, she called her employer, Bonetta Slaughter, her second mom. And she called her mom. Well, we'll see about that. Bonetta Slaughter's deposition is Tuesday. Anyway, we found out over this time period that Lisa McPherson expressed to her mother, to her best friend from high school who she had not seen in 4 years, Kelly Davis, that she was coming home for Christmas and to gather up all of her old friends from high school who are not Scientologists, who hadn't heard from her in years, because Lisa was coming home for good. Lisa had enough of Scientology, and she had enough of AMC Publishing that worked her around the clock. Unfortunately, what Lisa didn't know is that she came home in a body bag instead of coming home for Christmas. And as soon as Bonetta Slaughter called up Fanny McPherson, not the night that Lisa died, but afterwards, and said, "Oh, I hate to tell you this, but Lisa's dead," Fanny McPherson told me she knew instantly something was wrong. It wasn't a natural death. Well, let me tell you this. I've had this case for 2.5 years, and I never had a case like this, and I'm sure I'll never have another one like this again. I've been practicing law for 20 years. That's why there's not much up here anymore. And it's a stressful occupation. There's no stress like going up against the Church of Scientology. We have discovered through the legal process that, contrary to Scientology, Lisa McPherson did not die from a pulmonary embolism. Let me talk about that for a minute, because that's their big story. From the beginning, they said she died from a staph infection. And then when I filed the lawsuit, and they went out and hired outside doctors who said she didn't die from pulmonary embolism, or a staph infection, they came up with, "Oh, she died from a pulmonary embolism." Well, she had this major car accident 17 days before her death. And that caused her to hit her knee, which caused a blood clot to form, which traveled up and into her lungs and killed her. Well, the only problem with that scenario is there's no facts to support it. Yet Scientology is able to go out and hire 3, 4, 5, 6 pathologists who are well known, who have written letters to the prosecutor, and I have that, expressing opinions that she died from a pulmonary embolism. Well, how do you die from a pulmonary embolism when it goes up into a branch of just one artery that goes to just one lung? How do you say that? Well, you're working for Scientology. You say what needs to be said. And they say that, yeah, it didn't block the other lung, and it wasn't a total occlusion of this lung, but she died from a pulmonary embolism. Well, she didn't. We've hired top nationally known pulmonologists who say over and over again that she did not die from a pulmonary embolism. She died from severe dehydration. And we retain the expertise of Dr. John Coe. John Coe has written a book on vitreous fluid, and the vitreous fluid is in the eyeballs. And fortunately for us who are alive, no one goes into the eyeball to extract vitreous fluid unless you have a severe disease. The vitreous is only extracted once you're dead if there's some question about your chemistries, and that's where the chemistries are. And the chemistries that are in the vitreous fluid do not lie. Just like an X-ray, you can see it. It does not lie. And the opinion of Dr. Coe, this man is in his 80s. He flew down here from Minneapolis for his deposition at the insistence of Scientology. And he was grilled from 9 o'clock in the morning until I think 5:30 at night. Of course, one of the questions they asked over and over again was, have you ever met Jesse Prince and Bob Minton? And Dr. Coe turned to one of my consultants, Tom Haverty, and said, are you Jesse Prince? And of course, Tom Haverty is not Jesse Prince. Anyway, Dr. Coe has expressed the opinion that Lisa McPherson died from the most severe case of dehydration he has ever seen in his career. And just to give you an example, you're dead when your urea nitrogen in your vitreous fluid is 150. Lisa's test results were 300. That is severe dehydration. It is a torturous way to die. You're out in the middle of the desert, you're out on an island, there's no water, you're craving for water. I'm thirsty right now. And I drank coffee and water this morning. But the craving and the desperation that you suffer from severe dehydration is nothing but torture. So we filed suit against the Church of Scientology because their records show that they had Lisa McPherson inside the Fort Harrison Hotel before her car accident in isolation. And the last line on that record said she tried to leave. 3 hours later, she's in a car accident. She tells the paramedics she needs help. They say there's nothing wrong with you. She did a 100-yard sprint, and not at their request, after she moved her car off the road. She had a little crack in her radiator from hitting the propeller of the boat that was being pulled, which damaged her radiator. So there's not a big rear-end collision. She denied being hurt. There's no injury. The paramedics examined her, and the paramedic was a nurse. They took her to the hospital because she was talking like a robot. But they took her to the hospital because she took all her clothes off because they said there was nothing wrong with her. And she said, I'm not crazy. I didn't do this because I'm crazy. I took all my clothes off because I need your attention. I need help. They said, well, we'll take you to the hospital. They have people there that'll help you. She said, let's go. She goes to the Morton Plant Hospital, where every Scientologist in Clearwater goes, even if they have a cold, according to the ER doctor. And they examined her there. There was no injuries. There were no bruises. There were no complaints. The psych nurse said, under the law, I can't keep you here, but we really like you to stay overnight so we can observe you. She said, okay. Unfortunately, within minutes, a dozen or so Scientologists show up. One of them is Elaine Kartazinski, the senior case supervisor at Fort Harrison. Surrounded her bed, made the doctor leave the room. And then the doctor comes back in and Lisa says, I'm going back to the Fort Harrison Hotel. I'm going back to the church. They promised to take care of me. And the doctor begged her not to go, but she went. And how did she get to the car? she had to be held up and walked out to Elaine Kartazinski's car, where they had to lower her slowly into the front seat of his car. And they had to buckle her in while she had this blank stare going out into no man's land. And the records are absolutely clear. They held her against her will. I'm not speaking on anything that's confidential. And 17 days later, after losing about 50 pounds, after having the worst, Dr. Coe said, we have never seen in modern times dehydration at this level because people go to the hospital. They go on dialysis. They don't die from dehydration anymore. Why? Because Dr. Coe did the studies. He wrote the book. He told the medical profession how to take care of people like this. He said, I don't see this anymore. But Scientology, practicing medicine without a license, doing their quackery psychoanalysis or whatever they call it, puts her in isolation according to Hubbard's technology, which says she's PTS type 3, she's psychotic, so lock her up in a room with no treatment at all. That's how they treat people who are psychotic. The problem is severe dehydration causes you to go psychotic. Severe dehydration, according to Dr. Coe, at this level, causes you to be in a coma, where if they shake and yell at you, you wake up, you'll be incoherent, you'll blabber, and you'll go right back into your coma. Gee, is that why the last 3.5 days of Lisa McPherson's imprisonment are all of a sudden missing? Scientology, who prides itself on keeping exact records and not losing a piece of paper, lost her 3.5 days, the last 3.5 days of her life. They say she wasn't dehydrated. We were giving her protein shakes. Excuse me? Protein shakes? Protein shakes cause you to be dehydrated unless you drink lots of water. Well, we were giving her CalMag, formulated by Mr. Hubbard. CalMag causes you to be dehydrated unless you drink lots of water. They were dehydrating her. Now, I'm not a prosecutor, but I am a lawyer. And I'll probably say too much right now, but listen. 3 USF students recently died from a drunk driver. That drunk driver didn't mean to kill those 3 students. He was drunk. He ran a red light. They're dead. He's charged with homicide. He's charged with vehicular manslaughter. He didn't want them to die. He didn't want to run that red light. He was drunk. Scientologists weren't drunk. Scientologists were sober. Scientologists weren't acting alone when they locked her up in the room with a guard at the door. Scientologists were following orders. Scientologists were following orders from the Most High. Jesse Prince, another hero, a former Scientologist, former number 2 expert in the world on the tech of Scientology, got up the courage and came out to talk about Scientology in the summer of '98. And he graciously agreed to serve as a consultant and expert in the Lisa McPherson case. His bravery continued to rise when he finally disclosed in an affidavit his experience in Scientology and his eyewitness testimony of orders being issued by David Miscavige to Scientologists dying of cancer or other diseases when the Scientology tech wasn't curing them. Orders written to say, end cycle. I said, oh, come on, Jesse. I mean, show me something in Scientology that says end cycle. He opens up the Scientology dictionary. There's the word, end cycle, meaning to die. Die. The December 1st caretaker logs, which they call them, we call them guard logs, because all of these people looking at Lisa McPherson were actually guarding her. Janice Johnson, who used to have a medical license in Arizona, but she's their medical liaison officer, she writes down that after she injects Lisa McPherson with drugs against her will, that Lisa McPherson, when she wakes up, needs 2 liters of water. That's on December 1st. That is the smoking gun of their knowledge of the obviousness of Lisa McPherson's dehydration. And nowhere after that does she receive 2 liters of water. Now, we have had, there was supposed to be secret testing done, but fortunately, Dr. Joan Wood had kept 2 cc's of Lisa's vitreous fluid frozen all these years, and blood serum. And you know there's a criminal case going on. It's not manslaughter. It's not aggravated manslaughter. It's not murder, which it should be. There's not one person being prosecuted for her intentional death. It should be. And I heard that Bernie McCabe, the prosecutor, meets in private with David Miscavige, and I just don't understand that. And then again, if David Miscavige doesn't have anything to do with Flagg on Fort Harrison, why is he meeting with the prosecutor? But anyway, I don't know anything about that. Anyway, we got notice on Wednesday at 11:30 that the medical examiner, the prosecutor, finally decided where they're going to have this extra vitreous fluid tested. Now, I had originally recommended the laboratory outside of Philadelphia because that's what my experts recommended. Well, 2 days after I recommended that to the prosecutor, because the prosecutor was being feared, Doug Crow is a great guy, great prosecutor. He wanted to know my input and Flagg's input, try to get a neutral ground. I said, they got a great reputation. Go to Philadelphia, National Medical Services Laboratory. 2 days after I said that, I find out that Scientology hired the owner of the laboratory as their expert. So on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, I get a call saying, Ken, we're going to test the extra vitreous fluid. I said, where are you going to go? We're going to go up to Philadelphia. I said, really? Well then, since I can't tell you where to go, because I have no authority, at least have my expert there. Oh, no. Scientology objects to your expert being there. I said, well, then I object to all of this. So I had to call the chief judge, and she was very gracious and said, as soon as I get back from vacation on Monday morning, we'll have an emergency hearing. I said, well, let me see what the prosecutor promised to call me back and see if that's necessary. Well, nothing was going to happen Monday, so that wasn't necessary. And then the Bob Minton trial happens to be that Monday from noon till 9 o'clock at night. And during that time at 3:30, we had our emergency hearing because then the testing was going to be Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning. Well, my expert is on Thanksgiving holidays with his grandchildren. Now, I don't know where he's at. Sorry, 8 a.m. Tuesday morning, Philadelphia. But your expert can't be there anyway, so we have an emergency hearing. Judge Schaefer says he has a right to have his expert there. Why are you objecting, Scientology? And this is all public record. And the Scientology lawyer argues for about 15 minutes, and Judge Schaefer says, stop, what is your objection? Your objection's denied. I can have my expert there. I said, Judge, give me 48 more hours. This has been 4 years. Give me 2 more days to find my expert. It's Thanksgiving holiday. But the judge says, no, I can't. I can say your expert can be there, but I can't tell them when to test. Well, I'm sure Scientology didn't like this, but our expert was located. Dr. Coe was 6 or 7 days post-surgery for having 5, well, it's a quadruple bypass. This was a quintuplet bypass and an aortic valve replacement. And so we found him, and he knew the name of the son of this expert, Dr. Bant, So the medical examiner's office called up the son because no one would give us the number. They thought they didn't know who we were. In Minneapolis, they found the son found his sister. The sister said, he's here. So he calls me up at 7:30 at night. I tell him, please, please, please. He jumps on a plane in Denver. He flies to Philadelphia. There's a big snowstorm. He gets there. He gets to the laboratory, and I can't tell you the results, but I can tell you only one thing, because I promised to keep them confidential. I can tell you one thing, what the prosecutor said in open court. If the results in Philadelphia come back in favor of Scientology, then I have to tell Scientology, and that's a public record. Well, today is Saturday. The testing was last Tuesday, and I haven't heard a word in public about the test results. So I have a big smile on my face. Now, so we have a torturous death by dehydration. Let me just tell you real quickly some other things that happened this last year. Do I have time? Not really?
We'll make time.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Listen, Scientology, and I can tell you this because it's a public record, I'm very careful what I tell you because unlike any other case I had in 20 years, there's a lot of secret stuff going on in this case. They insist on confidentiality, and we'll respect that. This last year, they started to question the appointment of Del Liebrick as the personal representative of the estate of Lisa McPherson. They want to know how that happened. Well, the documents in the court file of the probate court show that Fanny McPherson signed the appointment of Del Liebrick. She consented. Fanny was the only surviving beneficiary of Lisa McPherson. She's the only one that could do it. She signed it on January 31st, 1997. Well, they say, how do we know that's not a forgery? Well, what do you mean? Forgery. So they took a second deposition of Del Liebrick with this new theory. And Del Liebrick told them there were eyewitnesses to this signing. One of them's a notary. Did they bother to go to Dallas, Texas and take the deposition of a notary who witnessed the signature? Not on the paper, mind you. She witnessed another document as a notary, but she was there when they were both signed. No, they don't go to take the deposition of the eyewitness. There was a hospice worker there, another eyewitness. She told the name in May of 99. Did they bother to go take the deposition? No. What did they do? They hire a handwriting expert. They get just a few old samples of Fanny McPherson's signature. And then they file a lawsuit in Pinellas County Probate Court, Lisa McPherson's probate case, saying that Del Liebrick is a forger. She forged the signature of Fanny McPherson just so she could be appointed the personal representative. Well, the problem with that is there's eyewitnesses who saw Fanny sign the document knowing what she was doing. And that hearing, by the way, is December 16th at 9:30, courtroom A here in Clearwater, where they are attempting now to remove Del Liebrick as the personal representative because they claim that she is a forgerer. They have also gone to the state attorney's office demanding that she be arrested for this severe and serious felony. What about the dead girl inside the hotel? You see, they can't stand up where the truth is, so they have all these side issues, and we will prevail on December 16th because Del Liebrick is not a forger. This last year, I discovered that when I went to buy my house, and sold my house to buy another house, I instantly had a bad credit report. And I said, well, how can that be? And they showed me my credit report. Well, it wasn't a bad credit report. They just said that I have to pay off all these bad debts that I have on my credit report. I don't have any bad debts on my credit report. They said, yes, you do. You went to Dallas, Texas, and you lived at this address, and you had a telephone taken out in your name, and you ran up a bill, and you didn't pay it, so it's on your credit report. I never lived in Dallas, Texas. Oh, well, that's not all. Then you went over here to San Diego County, and you lived in this house, and you took out this phone, and you ran up a bill, and you skipped town, and you didn't pay the bill. I never lived in San Diego County. Oh, well, there's more. Then you went to upstate New York, excuse me, I think it's Long Island, and you lived here. My wife would love to hear this stuff. And you lived here, and you took out a phone service, and you ran up a bill, and you didn't pay it. You're a bad person. You have to pay all these bills off before we give you a mortgage. Well, those are all forgeries. Those are all fraudulent accounts. Who would want to do that to me? And you know, I got the records. I didn't get the records of who they called during that time they ran up hundreds of dollars in my name. But they had my unlisted private residential phone number as a reference. Gee, how did they get that? Anyway, all right. All right, so let me tell you some more good news. This year, just a month ago, we requested the judge to permit us to claim punitive damages against the Church of Scientology for the murder of Lisa McPherson. The judge, after a 6-hour hearing, granted our motion, and we now have punitive damages claim against the Church of Scientology. Also, Scientology's tactics in this case is that, all right, well, she's dead, and it wasn't for all the reasons we think it is, so she died because she was negligent. They're blaming Lisa's death on Lisa McPherson. Also, I am proud to say that the Lisa McPherson Trust has been formed, and it is comprised of individuals dedicated to serve the wishes of Lisa's mother, Fannie McPherson. The Lisa McPherson Trust, organized by Robert Minton, who is not a worldwide conspirator, by the way, but who is an extremely gracious individual, formed the Lisa McPherson Trust to pursue the wishes of Fannie McPherson, which are very simple. Expose the truth and the abuses of the Church of Scientology. Tell the world how my daughter Lisa died, and help other victims of abuse from Scientology. And that's their stated goals in writing, and that's what that trust is all about. Now listen to this little story. Please bear with me. Mr. Minton came to my office one Monday afternoon to form this trust, for me to do the legal papers for it. It's hard to find lawyers that want to do anything that has Scientology in it. And it was on an afternoon, and I had him sign the paperwork, and we mailed it off to Tallahassee. Now, I don't know how this happens, but the very next morning, Bonetta Slaughter forms the Lisa McPherson Foundation. Now, is that a coincidence? I'll leave that right where it is. All right, quickly. On December 14th, 1999, coming up, we will have a hearing that may take all day to add David Miscavige as a defendant in the wrongful death case. Oh, here's something. Look, you know how hard it is to find a medical doctor or any type of expert who will want to testify in this case? It's extremely hard. I have called medical experts around the country. I tell them about the case without mentioning that one word, Scientology. They're all interested. They're ready to go. And I say, well, I need to let you know this. The defendant is the Church of Scientology. Well, I really don't need that kind of There are all kinds of organizations out there that fight cults. There is nothing out there that has the courage to fight Scientology just by exposing what they are, the truth about them, except for the Lisa McPherson Trust. It is comprised of individuals who have the courage to stand up and expose the truth. And that's all it's about, to expose the truth. But we do have experts on our case, multiple disciplines, all coming to the same conclusion that she died from one reason and one reason only, severe dehydration. That the entire process of dehydration was totally reversible. It was obvious for 5 or 6 days before she's dead. They chose to sit there and watch her die. And I believe that when the trial comes on June the 12th of the year 2000, set for 5 weeks, that the truth will prevail and justice will be served in memory of Lisa McPherson and Fannie McPherson. Thank you.
If I may, I'd like to take just one question now. There is a Q&A session just before lunch, so you have more opportunity perhaps if Mr. Dandar... Does anyone have a question? Well, in that case, I'll let Mr. Dandar go. Thank you very much.